Let's say you are adding first. The prompts came in from your data source. Now you are adding some filter, and we learned that you can also add some prompts through the filter. So now, those are the prompt. So this filter it's like a functional property wherein when you click it in the background, where they go and checks if there are any undefined prompts. So if you keep it checked, then that doesn't make sense, that if you have more prompts coming in while you're editing the report, or something like that. Workday does not auto-populate it. So that's why they just keep this. So every time you just check it, it becomes unchecked. And meanwhile it just checks in the background if there are any undefined prompts or not. So let's say, if you just remove it and let me just click OK. Oh, it allowed me to save. Why so? When it is going to give me this error. So it is keeping me prompting. It used to give error actually. Not sure if it's just for the built-in prompts or see, it's not here, but it is prompting me. We will test this with the filter as well, because it gives the error. I think, since they are default from data sources. Maybe they're not prompting, but it used to prompt. I'll just let it prompt again. So we will define some default values. So specify default value, and let's say I have only selected the vendor. And couple of them as the contingent worker types. And I'll just click OK. So now I'm being defaulted with these two values, but I would still have an option to change them or to add them or to completely remove them. Along with the other prompts for which we have not defined any default value. So if I just click OK, I will be only considered with the workers who are satisfying this particular condition. I just go. So this button is there to immediately send you back to your launch screen. So you can, if I just remove it. Then I'll be shown a creator worker. The lots of permutation combinations which can go for the prompts. We have covered the default. So if you want to default anything, you can do it from here. This third option in the default types. So do you know default? So if you want to default anything, some default and determine value at runtime. So what it does is, you can build a rule, a calculation. Something. Let's say there is a date field here in the prompts where you are being asked to compare with the date field. So what you can do is you can calculate that date field. Let's say in the date field, every time I want to pass a date, which says that day plus 2 days. So let's say I have a calculation that today's date plus 2 days I need to pass in as a prompt, so you can create a calculated field wherein you can create a date with today's date and 2 days in advance plus as well. So whenever that report is running in the background, a runtime value will be calculated whenever that report is being used, and you will still be prompted and that calculation will happen. So if I'm running it today, so today plus 2, whatever the date would be, that would be applied and shown to me at the prompt screen. So it's like, I don't want to specify a default value. I don't want to say no default value. I want the system to calculate a value for me based on the calculation that I'm going to enter here. It could be a calculated field. So, whatever, at the moment of time when the report is running, those values will be calculated and then it would be prompted to me on the prompt screen, and then I would again still have an option to make it something else, to change it, or no default value at all. So this is the third option, where you are asking the system to define a value in the prompt for you, based on the calculations that you are going to enter. Here could be a calc field as well. So this is the third option that you have. And if I go back again here to these two fields required, that means if you make it required, then these from the data source side. These prompts were not by default made as required. They have given you as optional fields. If you want to make them required, you can make them required. If you really want the user to only enter this value and without entering, they cannot just pass away, so you can make it required. So 1, we will keep it as required. And then the second option is, do not prompt at runtime. That means this is what it is controlling you, that even though you have prompts, you don't want your user to bother with because these were not added by you. Specifically, these were just part of the data source, which were added to you without your consent. So you have no idea, you don't want to use them at all. You can mark them as do not prompt at current time. So in that case, you will not be so first field. We have marked it as required. Second field, we have marked it as do not prompt at runtime. So let's see how it works and just click OK. So for contingent worker type, I am being shown with an extra sign, and employee type has gone from here because I have marked it as do not prompt at runtime. So it is not bothering me at all. And the third field, I did not do anything. I neither made it required nor I had any from the do not prompt. So it is still available for me and I can choose the values. But let's say, if I click OK. So I am being asked to mandatorily enter this value, since I have marked this prompt as required and I cannot go away without entering any value in this field. So especially when, you are using the data sources for indexed 1, you will have some or the other prompts. So if you really don't want to use those prompts, you can do this to not prompt it on time, so that you can do. So this is required, not required. So I do not want to prompt them at runtime. I'll just mark it as do not prompt at runtime. So these were some of the things for your prompts. I'll just Okay, so this is one way to generate the prompts. We'll learn the other ways as well. Now we'll go to the filter. So you have filter, as we discussed. That filter is basically on your primary business objects. So all the fields which are supported by your primary business object. You can use those fields to define your filter conditions. Filter conditions. It's like whatever filter you want to put, whatever conditions you want to put here, only those conditions. If the worker is meeting those conditions, then only you get that worker will pass and will be eligible to be in the output. So you can. Also, if you have some fields which are there in your column, so you can get from there if you want to put some conditions, using those fields, only so you can see these fields on the report and all the fields which you have on the report, you can use them to define any of your filter conditions. If you have anything other which is not, because it's not always true that only the output which is part of your columns, the filtration is condition is only decided on that. It could be anything other than as well. So then you can use anything other than the reports in the fields by typing the field name here, and you can create your filter. So you can just type any values. Let's say filter, if I want to type. Let's say I'm typing a filter. I want to say that any employees, maybe companies belonging to a particular company or a particular cost center, should only be part of my output. So let's say I'm putting a condition that company hierarchy. So this company hierarchy is not part of my output anywhere, but I still want to put it as a filter. So if I go here, this is on the global. I don't want this one. This is on the worker. I want this one, the company hierarchy for the workers, primary position. Company hierarchy, usually the business unit's kind of structure. So then I'll choose the operator. So in the filter, I have to choose the operator. So, since I'm doing a comparison, so I'm defining that I'm creating a condition. So what? My condition is that in mind I want to say that the people who are belonging to this particular company hierarchy should only be part of my output. So how can I do that? I want to make a list now. It is possible that I want to include more than one company hierarchies in my equation so that people satisfying that criteria can still be part of my output. So, whenever you have a multi-instance field in your field and you want to compare the values with a particular list, then the value that you are going to choose. So this will depend. So this operator's kind of changes when the field type changes. So if a field type is multi-instance, the operator might be different. If your field type is a single instance, your operator might be different. If you have a date field, then of course the operators will be different. It's like apple to oranges.